talk through the legislative process here in Colorado. It does vary from state to state, and it can be quite different from what we see at the national or federal level. First of all, when we're talking about bills, a bill needs a sponsor in one of the chambers in the House or the Senate to get started. And excuse me, each legislator is allowed to introduce five bills. And so once a bill has a sponsor, then the bill is drafted by a legislative council, which is a team of lawyers who are nonpartisan and they work for the state legislature. After that draft bill is complete, it is ready for introduction, and it is introduced either in the House or the Senate, depending, of course, on who the sponsor is to start that. They call that the prime sponsor, the very first sponsor. And so when a bill is introduced in a chamber, that is called the first reading, and it is the Speaker of the House or the Senate President who assigns the bill then to a committee or to committees. And what we say now at that point is the bill is read across the desk. That's the first reading, and it's assigned a bill number and assigned those committees in that chamber. Then the committee chair of that first committee assignment is the one who schedules a public hearing for that bill. And one thing that I think is really important to note that is in the state of Colorado, every bill is required to have a public hearing. That is not the same in other state legislators, and it's definitely not something required at the federal level. But here in Colorado, it is something that I think we take some pride in, is that every bill gets a public hearing, and that means that the public can come and speak either in favor or in opposition of that bill. And so during that public hearing, we get public comment, and committee members get to debate the bill, and both the committee members and the sponsors of the bill can provide amendments or changes to the bill at that time. Now, if there are amendments, those are voted on first, and then there is an up or down vote to move the bill forward out of that committee and onto its next assignment. If the bill passes the committee, it may either go to another committee, and oftentimes, if there's any money involved, it may go to the Finance Committee, or we'll have to go through appropriations. And then it gets to the full chamber, so the full House or the full Senate. Now, when it arrives to the House floor or the Senate floor, it first goes through what is called a second reading. And a second reading is really not like the full body acting, but it's more like the body is another committee. And so what happens is the Speaker of the House or the President of the Senate will assign another member of their party to chair second reading on that day. And so there is a chair that is assigned instead of the Speaker or the President, and then that chair runs that committee of what they call the Committee of the Whole. And at that time, there is debate that legislators, either in the House or the Senate, will offer amendments, and then they will take a voice vote on whether to move the bill forward. And it is up to the chair, whoever is chairing that day, to determine the outcome of that voice vote, and they will proclaim that the bill has passed or the bill has failed. And if the opposing party wants to challenge that determination by the chair, they may do so, and then they would request a recorded vote. But not all bills go through a recorded vote on second reading. Now, if it passes second reading, it then goes to third reading, which has to happen 24 hours after it passed on second reading. And on third reading, that is a recorded vote. And so when you are down in the Capitol, down at the Capitol tomorrow, you'll have the opportunity, hopefully, to watch third readings. And sometimes they can go pretty fast. And there is electronic boards that will show what the outcomes of each of those votes are and who voted yes or no on the bills. And during third reading, there can be some debate and there can be amendments. But oftentimes it's more common that there are not amendments and a lot of debate on third readings. And sometimes they can, like I say, can go very fast. So if a bill passes second and third reading in its first chamber, then the bill will go to the other chamber. And so here you see, leaving the House if it started in the House and it will go to the Senate. And when it goes to the second chamber, it repeats that whole entire process again. So in the new chamber, it gets assigned new committees, it gets another public hearing or public hearings, depending on if it goes to multiple committees, and then it will go through that second reading and that third reading. And one thing I want to note that I didn't say earlier about second reading is there's no public comment when a bill gets to a House or Senate floor. So it is just the legislators debating the bills when they get to the House or Senate. Now, if a bill, let's say, started in the House and gets its way over to the Senate, and then passes through the committees and passes through second and third reading in the Senate, and has no amendments to it in the second chamber, then it would go to the governor's desk to be signed into law. But that is kind of rare. Oftentimes, each chamber wants to have their fingerprints on the bill. And so, more often, that amendments will be made in the second chamber. And if amendments are made in the second chamber, the bill has to go back to the first chamber. So, say here we started in the House, it went to the Senate, amendments were made in both chambers, and now it has to return to the House floor for the House to approve the amendments that were made in the Senate. And so a couple things can happen. One is that the House can approve those amendments and so they take a vote. Do we approve the amendments that were made in the Senate? And if a majority of House members say, yes, we approve those amendments, then it will go to the governor's desk to be signed into law. If House members decide they don't like what the Senate did to their bill and they reject those amendments, then there are two options. One would be for them to say, we are going to set up a committee, a joint committee with the Senate, which they call a conference committee. And so they will assign members from the House, and then the Senate will assign members from the Senate. And both of those members will get together, usually early in the morning, and have a conference committee on the bill, try to hash out the differences between the two chambers, and try to produce a new bill, basically, which would be a conference committee bill, or they would call it a conference committee report that has to go back to both chambers to be approved before going to the governor's desk. Now, the other option is that the House decides we're going to reject the Senate amendments and we're not going to form a conference committee, and then the bill would die and not move forward. Or the conference committee doesn't reach an agreement, the bill would die and not move forward. Or one of the chambers would reject the conference committee report and the bill would die. So there's several places where the bill could die if there is not agreement between the Senate and the House on the bill. Now, when it gets to the governor's desk in whatever form or avenue it got there, as I just described, the governor has three choices. One, the governor has, if the legislature is in session, the governor has 10 days to determine whether he's going to sign the bill into law. And if he signs it, then obviously it becomes law. If he could decide not to sign the bill or not to veto it, and it automatically becomes law then as well. And then, of course, his third option is to veto the bill. And if he vetoes the bill while the legislature is in session, then both chambers have the option to override his veto, but it would require a two-thirds vote in the House and a two-thirds vote in the Senate. Now, what about if the session has ended? Because a lot of bills get passed at the very end of session and go to the governor's desk. Well, then he has 30 days to sign it into law. And if he vetoes bills after the legislature has ended, then there's no opportunity to override his veto. So that is quick and dirty overview of what happens down at the Capitol and how bills become a law. And